Here I will give you some of the guidelines for using the most essential selection tools. Although there are more, these are the ones I use on a daily basis. We'll start with one of my favorites, added a few versions ago, the quik selection tool. The quik selection tool uses a brush in order to paint in a selection area. I clicked and dragged and safely let go. But you may notice, as I'm painting with this tool, I'm very careful not to cross this circle outside the edge. When you cross outside the edge, that's when you'll get parts of the image that you aren't trying to select. I'll undo that. In using this tool, I try to stay 1 or 2 pixels inside the object I'm selecting, and if it ever goes too far, I just let it go and clean it up after. As I click and drag to the right, it's finding magically the edges for me. So my goal is to select this glass, and now it's mostly done. If I miss, no worries. I can come in and modify my selection. It's best to get your overall shape done and then clean it up rather than try to make everything perfect on the first try. Often the quik selection does a better job of cleaning up than it does with its initial selection. So I've selected most of this glass. I'll zoom in with Command plus or Control plus because you're only as good as your zoom level. You may think you've done a great job and then zoom in and find out you've missed some things. I also, in using this tool, may do quick clicks just to add small areas. But every time I'm clicking and dragging, this circle is not crossing outside of my glass. Now to clean up, I'm going to change modes on this tool. I'll click on the Subtract from Selection, and again, I keep the circle this time completely outside of the glass, being very careful that the round edge doesn't cross over, that it stays well away from the edge. I'm using my wheel on my mouse to move around, and now I'm fairly happy with this edge. Rather than spend too much time, I could go back to adding to selection, clean up this little bit. I'm going to use a feature called Refine Edge. I just zoomed out twice with Command minus, and I believe this was added in Photoshop CS3. But one click on Refine Edge will show me if I did a great job or a poor job making this glass a selection. I could zoom in again with Command plus or Control plus, even with this dialog open. And all initial selections will have a bit of a rough edge. There are 2 great features here. Smoothing, which is ideal for objects, which will give me a better edge. So the higher I set smoothing, the more it rounds off my selection. If I dial it to 0, you could see especially here it's bumpy. Dial it up a bit and it smooths that out. If I want it very crisp, I can dial up contrast. And now I've got a lovely, sharp, crisp edge on this glass. And often it's best to contract your selection a bit. It's preferred to cut a little inside the shape rather than see the border or the background that you're pulling this glass out of. And finally, radius attempts to blend away the background. Now that's a very high number, so it might go too far, especially since I'm dealing with glass. But in this case, I think I'll dial contrast down a bit, and I'll be happy with where I am now. This is just an introduction to the quik selection tool and using Refine Edge. When I'm finished, I'll choose Output to New Layer with Layer Mask, and that will cut away the background. When I click OK, now I can instantly see I've isolated this object. So I never finish a selection of an object or a person without running Refine Edge, especially when my goal is to cut something away or drop it into a new background. Then